Welcome back to True Cyber Crimes, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on the shadowy world of the digital underworld. I'm Chris Kuselis.
And I'm Nick Santilli. Today we're tackling one of the toughest puzzles in cybersecurity: why criminals are so hard to catch and how they manage to vanish into the digital ether like ghosts in the machine.
We'll explore the tactics, tools, and real world cases of the law enforcement chasing shadows. Plus, what can be done to fight back. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. So let's kick off right here and just kind of let's get into it. Cybercrime is unlike any other crime. It's completely borderless. A hacker sitting in a cafe in Eastern Europe can target a bank in New York, a hospital in Tokyo, or a small business in Sydney without ever stepping outside the country. The global reach creates a jurisdictional nightmare for law enforcement.
Exactly. I mean, imagine trying to arrest someone when the crime scene can span multiple countries, 5 countries, none of which agree on the legal protocols for how to handle that. And cyber criminals, they don't just rely on geography to hide. They use tools like VPNs or virtual private networks, which encrypt their internet traffic, mask their IP addresses, make it nearly impossible to pinpoint their real location. So they could be sitting in that cafe in Europe, but actually, make it look like it's coming out of, Atlanta, Georgia.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
little kind of piece of insight here. An IP address, I think most people are aware, but for those who are still kind of learning this stuff, it's like your digital home address. It tells the internet where you are. So virtual private networks, VPNs, work by rerouting the traffic that you are generating by your surfing and your activity online through servers in other places, other countries, states, cities, whatever it might be. So it really appears that you're browsing from, say, Sweden when you may actually be in Singapore. Some VPNs offer no log policies, meaning they don't store records of your activity, leaving investigators with even less to work with for tracing down the who's who in these scenarios.
And even if they do trace the IP, it might lead to a dead end, like a public Wi-Fi hotspot at a coffee shop or a compromised server in a data center halfway across the globe. These servers are often zombies, infected machines used as relays to bounce traffic and obscure the hacker's true origin. It's like chasing a ghost through a maze with no exit.
Yeah, when you watch those movies and they're like trying to trace a call or something, and they have some screen and it's like, oh, it's bouncing from here to here to here. I mean, that's kind of that concept of the zombies, right? You could be bouncing your internet connection off of all these machines that have no idea they're infected and they're in
Yeah.
fact contributing to, a cyber crime.
Yep.
Um, Plus, many cyber criminals operate in countries with weak cyber laws or limited cooperation with international agencies. It creates those safe havens, a lot like there's tax havens, right?
Yeah.
Internationally, these are
Hacker
those safe
haven.
havens for hackers, hacker havens, where they can work with near impunity, knowing that their extradition is unlikely. So let's kind of move into some of the tricks of the trade then. As we know, we've talked about this, many times at this point. Cyber criminals are masters of deception, and they've got a ton of tricks up their sleeve, right? One of their go-to moves is spoofing, which is pretending to be someone else online. And this is, pretty one-on-one level stuff, right? This is a digital version of social engineering. They can spoof email addresses to send phishing scams, create fake websites that look identical to the real thing, or even spoof caller IDs to trick victims into giving up sensitive information. I actually had this happen just recently. I kept getting a call, and the caller ID indicated that it was from the banking institution that I
Hmm.
use, or one of them that I use. And it even had a local area code and all this stuff. I looked up the number, and sure enough, it was like a branch not far from me. And I was like, it's kind of weird. And the voicemail, it sounded just like anybody else saying, hey, we whatever it was that they were, calling to share with
Mhm.
me about some new product or whatever. And next time I was in there for something, I just said, "Hey, by the way, I got this weird call," and they said, "Yeah, we would never call you about something like that." I was like, "I figured, like I didn't call back, I didn't do it, but yeah, I mean, they will absolutely spoof. It was a number that when I Googled it, it went right to that address. So
And kind of on the same note here, I got spoofed like that once as a salesperson sending out messages on LinkedIn. I had somebody come back from the LinkedIn person and with some broken English, but I never thought somebody would be able to spoof LinkedIn. And then when we got
yeah,
back and forth after about three messages, they asked me for a $50 gift card for their niece. So I had that person's email and I sent hey, please read this email. And I showed it to him. He's like, thanks, I got bit. So then there's cryptocurrency, the lifeblood of modern cyber crime. It's decentralized, often anonymous, and perfect for laundering money or collecting ransom payments. Criminals love it because it's hard to trace compared to traditional banking. And as a little nugget here, Bitcoin transactions are recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain, but criminals use mixers or tumblers to jumble their transactions with other obscuring the money trail. Privacy coins like Monero or Zcash take it further by hiding transactions details entirely, making it a favorite for ransomware payment.
yeah, and let's talk about the dark web. I think a lot of people um, probably have some misperceptions about what it is. From the name, we can garner it's a really a hidden corner of the internet that is only accessible through special software. There's a special browser. You can't just use your Chrome browser or something like that, which is good, right?
Yeah.
If you're choosing to venture into that, it's not easy, right? You have to know
Mhm.
what you're doing, and so there's a browser called Tor. In Tor, it creates a marketplace. They've got stolen data. Whenever you hear about data leaks in the news, says, "Oh, 7 million credentials were leaked." This is where you would find that. They've got hacking tools, illicit services everywhere from well, yeah, illicit services. We'll just leave it at that. They have credit card numbers available. They have ransomware kits. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. But here's an interesting point about the dark web. It isn't inherently illegal. It was originally designed for privacy. So think about activists or journalists in oppressive parts of the globe that are just trying to share information carefully and privately. But that anonymity, ironically, makes it a breeding ground
Yeah.
for criminal activity. So with marketplaces like Alphabay, at least a prior marketplace that's since been shut down, it basically acted as a sort of eBay for cybercrime.
Sure, sure. Well, another trick is social engineering, and we've talked about that, manipulating people into giving up sensitive information. Hackers might pose as a tech support agent or a bank employee to trick you into revealing passwords or clicking malicious links. It's low tech, but it's devastating when it works.
Yeah, I mean, we all want to trust people, right? So that's when somebody calls trying to help you with something, it can throw you off.
Mhm.
And don't forget about botnets. And I think this is something that probably fewer people, at least outside of what you and I do every day, really understand. But networks of infected computers controlled remotely by hackers are called botnets. So, we kind of talked about that zombie machine earlier. That's kind of a piece of a botnet. Um, these networks of zombie machines or botnets can then launch massive attacks. So sometimes a website will have come down because of a distributed denial of service or a DDoS attack, and that's because it's receiving just an untenable number of requests to like load up its web page, and because it's distributed against across all of these botnets, it's coming from all angles, and that web server can't keep up, and it like goes offline. um, um, Anyway, I digress a little bit from that point, but these botnets can even, moving on from DDoS attacks, they can even harvest data from thousands of devices without owners even noticing. So it's interesting to see how a lot of things. This kind of takes me back to like the early 2000s, and a lot of us had this SETI screensaver. So when your computer was like asleep and the screensaver was on, it was actually, in theory, right? I want to believe it was true. Uh, Giving my computer computing power kind of as a botnet to NASA or the SETI organization that was scanning
I
for life
remember that.
in the universe.
Yeah.
And so that was, and initially, um, you know,
You're doing good
real.
for the world.
Yeah, it was not a malicious thing. It was, hey, we can use this. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And now we've got, the bad version of it. So
And people stealing to mine crypto. So
right.
who
Yeah,
knows?
exactly.
But let's ground this in some real world examples. Take Egevy Bogachev, and I'm sure I butchered his name, but he was the mastermind behind the Game Over Zeus malware. This guy orchestrated a botnet that infected millions of computers, stealing over $100 million from banks and businesses. You know, despite being on the FBI's most wanted list, he's still out there, likely hiding in plain sight, and I would imagine he's still up to no good.
Yeah. Maybe he changed his ways. You never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Then there's the Lazarus Group, allegedly backed by North Korea. They pulled off the 2014 Sony Pictures hack, which we're actually going to talk about in another one of our shows here, where they leaked unreleased films and employee data. And then in 2017, WannaCry ransomware attack, which crippled hospitals and businesses worldwide. Despite global investigations, again, nobody's been arrested, partly because state-sponsored actors are shielded by the governments that they come from,
And
or
another big
rather the
player,
countries that they come from, not the governments
they're
that they
they're
necessarily
they're
come from.
yeah, they're protected by by the countries. Another big player was the R Evil ransomware gang, responsible for massive attacks on companies like JBS Foods and Kaseya. They extorted millions before vanishing after a law enforcement crackdown. But here's the kicker: experts believe they didn't retire; they likely just rebranded under a new name like Black Cat or Conti, which we have talked about extensively on other podcasts. And just a little nugget here, ransomware as a service is a growing trend. It's like franchising crime. Hackers run out ransomware tools to less technical criminals who then launch attacks and split the profits. There's a lower barrier for entry, letting even amateurs, cause major damage.
Yeah, and we can't overlook smaller scale criminals, the ankle biters, less sophisticated, probably ones using, chat GPT and things like that to just create chaos and hope they get a little bit of crumb here and there. Take the case of Guccifer, a Romanian hacker who broke into the email accounts of high profile figures, such as Colin Powell, George W. Bush's family. Um, he was eventually caught, but only after years of operating under multiple aliases across many jurisdictions.
So these cases show how cyber criminals exploit gaps in technology, law, and international cooperation. They're not just hacking systems, they're hacking the system overall.
Yeah, yeah. They're it's easy to think of criminals as just kind of being too dumb to go earn a real living, but these guys are pretty smart about the way that they do what they do, unfortunately. Um, so let's maybe dive into that a little bit more. Why is it so hard to catch them? And we've talked a little bit about the jurisdictions and things like that, but what makes these criminals so slippery? And first, there's the issue of jurisdictional complexity, which you just mentioned, right? If a hacker is operating from a country with no extradition treaty or weak cybersecurity laws like Russia, China, and some other parts of Europe, that prosecution is nearly impossible, even if we do track them down.
And then second, anonymity is their superpower. Hackers use aliases, encrypted messaging apps like Telegram or Signal, and fake identities to cover their tracks. Even if you catch one, they might just be a low-level mule in a larger network with the real masterminds really staying out of reach.
Yeah. Third is the technical sophistication, and while you do have some of those script kiddies and kind of these days more chat GPT driven hangers on, a lot of them are kind of running on a next level of sophistication. They're highly skilled programmers, or they've employed through a marketplace advanced malware packages and tools, day exploits, and other custom build tools that are really targeted to specific uses. Um, I think we've talked about 0 days in some of our past shows, but just to kind of shine a light on that for a second, if you're unfamiliar with that term, a 0 day exploit is a vulnerability in software that until day zero is unknown to the vendor, right? Some vendors know, like, oh, if you do this or do you do that, like this could happen. A 0 day is until it's discovered, it's a unknown, and hackers will go ahead and exploit these 0 days until a patch is available. And we talk a lot about patching being so important. This is why. Uh, it makes it incredibly dangerous to not patch your systems if there's a back door that's been discovered. And these exploits, these 0 day exploits, can then sell for millions of dollars on the dark web just because they're so effective to be used by
And
other hacking groups.
a lot of the technology companies out there will pay people to find these exploits and
Yeah,
bring them to their attention before they get there. I mean, Apple, well, I mean, they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars if you can find an exploit and get it to them.
yeah,
But
bug bounties. Yeah,
yeah,
I've got a couple friends who have actually collected some bug bounty money for things that they've discovered 0 days
that's
on. So
that's a great gig.
yeah, kind of cool.
And let's not forget the sheer scale of the crime. Law enforcement agencies are often understaffed and underfunded, struggling to keep up with thousands of cases. Meanwhile, cyber criminals operate 24/7, adapting to new defenses faster than agencies can respond.
And finally, there's that psychological edge. As we've said a lot, cyber criminals know how to exploit human error or the human condition, right? To just
Mhm.
want to be helpful. So whether it's poorly secured server or an employee unknowingly clicking on a sophisticated phishing attempt, they don't need to break into Fort Knox when they can trick someone into leaving the door open. That's why we talk about education is as important as investment in tools and technology.
And Nick, I'd like to think that we could solve all the world's problems right here, but I don't think you and I can. So what's the solution to catching these digital ghosts? It starts with better international cooperation. Cybercrime doesn't respect borders, so law enforcement needs to collaborate across countries. And as we know, not all countries see things equally or get along. So they may let people within their borders try to crack into into other countries because they just don't care. So sharing intelligence and streamlining extradition processes would be key in fighting this.
And it might be somewhat of a divisive statement, but kind of needs stronger cybersecurity laws and more funding for cyber forensics. I see it divisive because some people want more privacy and less
Yeah.
big government control, but maybe it's not so much about big government control and more about the government's cooperating a little bit more. Um, anyway, many agencies are stretched thin as it is, and with outdated tools and not enough training of experts to tackle the volume of cases, governments need to treat cybercrime with the same urgency as physical crime.
And education's huge. The more people understand how these crimes work, the better they can protect themselves. Simple habits, Use strong passwords, use unique passwords. So two-factor authentication, it adds that extra layer of security by requiring second form of verification, like a code sent to your phone. Yes, I know it can be painful sometimes, but look at the billions of dollars that have been lost that could have been prevented. It's one of the easiest ways to lock out hackers, even if they do steal your password.
On the tech side, companies need to invest in proactive defenses. These days, there's AI-driven threat detection tools, and performing regular security audits. Almost, I mean, there's offensive security is frequently referred to as penetration testing, but I would submit that offensive security is more, taking those proactive steps, like threat detection, like doing your own pen tests, like having regular security audits, things that you can kind of go on the offensive and get in front of some of those things. So, when you just wait for an attack to happen, it's kind of like waiting for that burglar uh, before installing a lock on your front door and just going, I hope it's okay.
Yeah. And let's not forget about the role of the individual. I mean, this technology is built to help people out. And we got to remember that. And if you spot a suspicious email or website, report it. You might not catch the hacker yourself, but you could help investigators piece together the puzzle. Together, we can make the digital world a little less shadowy.
Yeah, and that's part of why we're doing this. We find it interesting, but it's also good. More people know and understand this stuff, right?
Yep.
So we're doing our little bit here, Chris. Um, so that's it for today's episode of True Cyber Crimes. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy diving into the digital underworld with us, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show and learn about some of these things that they might have not known before.
And stay vigilant out there. The digital world is full of shadows, but with the right knowledge, you can shine a light on them. Stay alert, stay informed, stay safe.
Yeah. Until next time, this is Nick Santilli and Chris Kouslis signing off. Thanks, Chris.
See you, Nick. See you next time.